Good day, and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. And thanks again for being part of this great experience in mental health from a peer perspective. We see you getting right now of this show, Mayhem, Madness, and Mental Health. What's going on? Mayhem, Madness, and Mental Health. What's going on? To help me sort this, environmental artist and activist Daniel Lanzilotta. Daniel, thank you for being part of Mental Health and You today. Good morning.
Always. Thank you. Good morning, Cynthia. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm doing good. I'm doing good in spite of so much. I'm sure you are
Yes,
too.
it's Mayhem May.
Yes, indeed. Mayhem May, Madness May, Mental Health May. Again.
Yes,
But what does that
yes.
mean to you? I wanted to say, I wanted to ask everyone what's going on. And I wanted to call this show that because what is going on between the mayhem, the madness, and mental health in the midst of all of this? And you, as an mental artist, you, as an activist of long standing in the community, what's your impressions? What's your feelings? What's your take? What's going on, Daniel?
Well, we spoke earlier
In a thousand
yesterday, and
words, please, in a
excuse
thousand
me.
words or less. A thousand
Yeah,
words or less. What's going on? Joking.
that's really a difficult one to do. Maybe 100,000. Yes. So I've been collecting crack vials for the last 4 years, and
Mm.
I have a few thousand at this point. And that started out as single stream
Can
use
you
of plastic in the environment. So we're
can you
all used to this idea, right? This is a single stream use of plastic in the environment. But I was living in
mm,
Harlem at the time when I started seeing lots of crack vials. And I thought, wow, that's plastic in the environment. And that's how it started out. And so I started looking into it. I started collecting them. That was about 2 years before COVID. And then COVID happened. And as it tamed down, I started collecting again, but I noticed a gigantic increase in the volume of crack files in Black and brown communities, specifically Harlem, South Bronx, Brooklyn. And my whole vision of what this all meant shifted because I walked into Marcus Garvey Park and I saw some very ugly uh, situations with Black and brown people keeling over, uh, oblivious. And I realized that my tagline was, I bring significance to the seemingly insignificant. That's insignificant. But it shifted from that plastic to to humans, and that really that the human beings were the single stream insignificant ones now, not the plastic bottles anymore. And so I started looking into this, and I started to realize that we're in a situation where we really do not care about what happens in these communities with drug abuse, addiction, mental health, which is mental illness, really. Mental health is, to me, is something much different than mental illness. And my
Daniel,
concern is that we are not paying attention to what's happening in these communities, Black and brown communities.
Daniel, I need to interject. You said we don't care. Isn't that we don't care, or it's just the system is overwhelmed?
The system is certainly overwhelmed. The system is
Yeah.
overwhelmed with just normal day-to-day life, but the system as the net, the social net that catches folks that literally fall between the crack. It's sort of an
Mm.
interesting metaphor. And then there's the crack use. That's not even it's not even overwhelmed. It doesn't exist, in my opinion.
Well, what's this? I mean, this has been going on for years.
It has
It
been
probably
going
will
on for
continue
years,
to
and
go on.
that's the most interesting thing about it is that when I
Oh,
go out into the community to collect crack vials specifically, people ask me, I thought that was over. And I said, it's never been over. It's, in fact, it's worse than ever. And if you look at the data that I look at, you'll see that it's increasing and that there are overdoses every single day. That it's insane because let's say the formulation has shifted a little bit. There's fentanyl that's cut into the crack, and that's a very deadly mixture, and you don't know what you're buying when you're scoring. The other thing is that there's so much cocaine being produced out of Colombia that the prices dropped to $5 a hit. One of these things is $5 now. So that's like a price war. And so because the price is so low, it's like oil in a sense. The price of oil is very low, so you can produce more toxicity here. Like if you read the ingredients on this thing, this is laundry detergent, you would like shake your head. You need to be a chemical engineer to understand what's going on. And then you have this poison. This is poison, and this is poison. And interestingly enough, I just read yesterday from a Native American proverb that was asked to a chief, what is poison? And his response was, anything that's in excess, anything too much of anything is poison. And that sort of makes a lot of sense in a culture like America, where it's nothing but consumption, 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 consumption. And we're literally poisoning ourselves on many different levels. And that intersectionality of poison is really detrimental to all of us, no matter who you are. But when you look at and you walk around the streets as I do, and I do take time to do this 2 to 3 times a month, and also do trash walks, you'll see that this poison and this poison, it's literally destroying our environment, our souls, our minds, our bodies. And there's really no recourse at this point. I mean, people have a really hard time. Where do you turn? You're asking, how do you fix this? How do you fix this? It's a matter of trying to understand the situation and its magnitude first, and then ask yourself, why is it continuing to go on? Not only what are we going to do about it, but why is it happening?
Well, in your opinion, why is it happening?
It's
And what's
happening
the
for several reasons. It's
it not being able to stop? I mean, it's gloomy. Is why, in your opinion, as an artist, as an activist, that it can't be stopped according to you? It will
It's
not.
not according to me. It's just according to what has been going on all along. This is a gigantic money-making machine, and so that's part of the issue. It's money. It's in every single community. There's no one is immune to this insanity across the board. That's poison food, poison soil, poison water. This is allowed. We enable this insanity to continue, and that's true of the drug trade. and addiction and mental health. And so unless we intervene at a very profound, deep level, if our healthcare system was funded just like the military budget, maybe this might be fixed.
Maybe, maybe not, because as you said, the excesses. You mentioned the excesses, and that's all over our society, Daniel. You can have access in drugs. You can have access in food. You can have access in work, social media, so much.
Yes,
Seems like we
because
are a society of accesses.
this is a
And how
culture of extraction, and it's a culture of distraction. To be
that
distracted in America is part of the program. We're programmed to be distracted by entertainment, sports, food, anything that takes our attention away from becoming internal and becoming more quantum about who we are and how we operate and what our motivations are and what we consume. So it could all be shifted over time, but it's going to take a whole bunch of education and dedication to change this, because there's only a vowel that separates medication from meditation. And so either we're going to be medicated and push down the depression, or we're going to free ourselves through meditation and be free from the insanity that we experience every day under the culture that we live under.
what is it in your life, Daniel? What is it in your art that drew you to this? Yes, you're a
I
citizen
come
of the
from a
world, but
multicultural
yes,
background. I grew up with tremendous diversity. I grew up with music and food, and this is all in the Bronx, as I could show you my Bronx shirt. And so I'm very proud of where I'm from. It's my hometown. it gave me my core values at the time that I grew up in the Bronx. I'm part of the Bronx 200 artists. I'm deeply attached to this core value that I had from growing up in the Bronx. My imagination was born there, and I thrive on that. I know I go through the Bronx all the time, and I have deep memories of the childhood that I had, and so I'm drawn to the diversity. I'm drawn to the way we all got along. We all got along when I was growing up. It was really great. So, and I was free. I was a very free child growing up in the Bronx. I had I
What,
had
Daniel? What did freedom mean to you that you think it doesn't mean to other kids?
I don't.
What did
Well,
freedom mean
we
to you?
didn't we weren't attached to cell phones and laptops and video games. We were outside playing bicycle, stoop ball, monk freeze, hide and seek. There were many lots at the time, and I would go explore in the lots, and we would collect bicycle parts and make bicycles. It was just a very freeing experience. I would take the number 2 train from my neighborhood. I would go down to the city at a very young age by myself. My mother didn't know, my father didn't know, but I would explore my city as very early on at the time, and the subway was a whole 20 cents.
So a whole 20 cents. Go figure that out, y'all. But you make it seem so idyllic. And I do remember that myself. But but all these many years later, you got to realize there were drugs and there was abuses back then
Oh
too.
yeah, there was absolutely there were heroin addicts in my neighborhood, and the interesting thing about that, we knew who
Get
they were. They were friends.
different. Mm-hmm.
But they hid away, and they did what they were doing in alleyways, and there it was not very blatant and in your face. If you walk across 110th Street, go into Marcus Garvey Park, there's no shame. Everyone's doing whatever they're doing. It's really an out of control situation, and so we've enabled this to happen, and it's been normalized in a sense. And since we've given permission to do this, it continues on in a way that is very detrimental to Black and brown people in particular. It's killing Black and brown people at a rate that's really astronomical, and it could stop, but it seems not to be able to happen that way.
Seems not to be able to happen. You know, Daniel, we're getting ready to take a break. But at the other end, on the other side, we're going to talk about the mental health implications of all of this. This
Every day,
Millions of people are connected
and even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together.
we should still make an effort.
We should still make an
to
effort.
get to know each other,
on a deeper level.
Father,
cosplayer,
Mentor.
actor.
it's time we take a step forward
It's time we take a step forward.
Come together.
and discover
How accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
Regardless of where you are on your path to retirement, you can still take charge of your financial future today. Visit aceyourretirement.org and answer a few questions from Avo, your friendly digital retirement coach, for free tips, resources, and advice customized for your situation to help you feel confident and prepared for retirement. Retirement looks different for everyone. Make sure you're prepared for your financial future at aceyourretirement.org.
Wow, welcome back to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. We were having an interesting conversation with Daniel Lanzilotta, environmental activist and artist. Daniel, we were talking about the mayhem, madness, and mental health times of today. And we were on the other side. Before we went to break, I wanted to ask you, about the mental health implications of all of this. We're talking about back in the day where, yes, there were drugs and whatnot. And, let's not be naive about it. But you don't feel that was much in our face as it was today. Granted, we didn't have social media and we didn't have access to other news outlets like we do today. It wasn't, I dare say, maybe as glamorized as it happens to be today. It maybe sometimes in movies, It was, back, but the mental health implications, being that this is a show that deals with mental health from a peer perspective. I mean, it's
And that,
devastating. As a peer specialist, I see it every day with my clients, unfortunately. The madness,
well,
the mayhem of all of this.
right. So this is
You How do you deal? How has it impacted you?
uh, it devastates me in a way that breaks my heart, and
Mm,
I understand the nature of the complexity of the story historically, and
mm,
that my identity is a part of that story. And so when I go into the community and I see what's happening, and I see uh, black men and young black men, and I see brown people, and I see particularly black women who are strung out on drugs, it breaks my heart knowing that in a society such as this, with the story that it has and the history that it has, that is not, and the lies and the disinformation that's been historically for centuries, and this is the fallout of that. That people literally have fallen between the cracks. For instance, I spoke to a guy about a month ago now, who said he had mental health issues, mental illness issues rather, and that he was being criminalized because of it, because he was also a drug user, and that he spent a good um, about 30 years going in and out of prison, and that his mental illness issues were being criminalized, and that it was a vicious cycle for him, and that there was no intervention to help him. And that to me is really kind of horrific, considering that we do have this military budget and that we do send money overseas to so many other countries when we're not taking care of our own. And but you're going to ask those same folks to go protect you in light of war, or to go and get crude oil, which is one of the basis of the problems here to begin with. That's okay, but I disagree with that notion, and I disagree with that model that you would ask the same people that you're not taking care of when they come back. We know this from Vietnam, don't we?
yes, we do. We know this from Vietnam. We also know this from wars since Vietnam.
Exactly.
As the artist, as a man in this society, as a citizen, what is your charge to us? How can we help? How can we be impactful? What does the
Um,
activist do? What is
listen
our job?
to
What's our task?
First, I would say listen to Samora Pinderuse in the Healing Project, and listen to what he has to say. Uh, Listen to the NPR concert, and listen to what he has to say about black and brown people in incarceration, and listen to the music, and listen to him speak about having the courage to stand up and say, "Stop this! This is out of control. That we're imprisoning and unlawfully some folks that are absolutely innocent, and that we're punishing people because of mental illness, and that the intervention to help people get on their feet, and that we all benefit when we are all doing well. I'm doing well when you're doing well, and that the pie is big enough, the country is big enough, there's plenty of space in this country for everyone, and that we have to take a stance." And so I decided through my work with oceans and water and plastics that this was also part of the issue, that we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to say something, um, and stand up and say it and do something about it, no matter how tiny it might seem. Don't walk by and pretend it's not happening, because it's happening, and because it's happening over there doesn't mean it doesn't affect you where you are. So uptown, downtown Manhattan is a great example of it, because I had spoken to a crack user in Marcus Garvey Park about 4 months ago, and we spoke about what happens below 96th Street. And because I have yet to find a crack vial on the Upper East Side. She says, "Oh, no, That's not true. It's just delivered differently. And that happens to be the facts. And so, yes, it's there, but it's hidden away. And if you're wearing a suit and you're going to work and you're using crack in the morning or whatever during the day, and you're a drug abuser or user, it's just delivered differently. So it affects us all to some degree, somehow. It's not over there. The grass is not greener over there, and that's no pun intended. That we all have a responsibility to each other, and that little fact that we all have a responsibility to each other is really a quantum idea. We're coming all from the same source. This is nothing unusual. This is ancient wisdom, and so that ancient wisdom happens to come from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, and we've discarded all that information. This is the information that has to be reborn in our consciousness, and this is the information that has to change the way we're doing business. It's not working, as we can see. It's not working.
I mean, if you had the opportunity to speak to young kids today in a school setting, a gallery setting, on a corner, what would you tell them?
Learn your history.
Mm.
Learn where you come from. Know who your ancestors were. Understand the truth of the story. Don't be dissuaded by what's happening around you. Find a focus. Have many interests. Learn other languages. Speak to someone who doesn't look like you. Don't judge anyone on their on the package they come in, or the religion that they practice, or their sexual orientation. This is a short experience that we're having, each of us, and that this short experience doesn't have to be miserable. And
Doesn't have to be right.
it doesn't have to be miserable. And because we're all in the same boat, essentially, with the amount of time we get to be on the planet, that the portion of time that you've been allotted, don't make someone else's life horrible. Don't be mean, and don't be condescending just because someone is different than you.
What is the role of the artist?
The role of the artist is to really come to terms with what your vision is and what your purpose is and how you're using materials, for instance, and to bring to attention to the masses, to the raised consciousness of society, to say, look what's going on here. You know, for instance, if I see trash in the environment, when I see this on the street, or this is the expression of trauma in the environment. Litter is personal trauma in the environment. It's energy that's been dissipated and put into the environment, and that is exponential. It goes out, 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 out. So a person who litters is dealing with their internal trauma. And until we deal with our personal trauma and my trauma with whoever is in my life, and I have a personal journey to heal, and everyone starts to look internally, it's a big request that I'm making, that people deal with their personal issues and trauma, and to understand what the energy of litter, pollution, toxic soil, toxic water, toxic food, toxic products. And so that energy is exponential. It's always expanding outward, and that's why we're in the mess we're in with environmental
Daniel,
issues.
looking at somebody's trauma, that's hard. Into trauma. You're asking us to do that. We all get it.
What's that?
We all have that. You know, you're asking people to look inward in order to be able to look better outward. Maybe that's why things are going on, because we're not looking inward.
That's
but
correct.
how can you look inward when it's
if
so
if
hard?
I keep going out into the world every morning angry and pissed off about something, and I'm sharing that with everybody that crosses my path, that does not make a good day for me or anyone else. Or if I'm throwing garbage out of my window, or I'm illegally dumping, New York City sanitation department has a special task force now, and I get that feed. It's $4,000 fine, and they impound your car. That person who's illegally dumping in our city, in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Staten Island, and throwing their trash out on our in our city, that person has an issue. They have trauma, and they're dumping their trauma in our environment, and then we have to look at that stuff. And the New York City Sanitation Department says, no, we've had enough. They have hidden cameras all over the city, and they're tracking these people down. They're getting their cars, impounding their cars. There's a fine on the car as well, and a $4,000 fine for dumping. That's trauma. And so when you take that trauma and you start looking at it in families, in buildings, in the city, town, village, and it starts to expand, and it becomes a state, it becomes a country, and then you have wars. These are all traumatic experiences. Putin has some serious issues, personal issues that he's expressing for whatever reason, and inflicting pain and suffering on other people. They're his cousins.
Okay, Putin is doing that, but so is the guy on the street. So is somebody's father, someone's
correct.
mother. So
That's
is the
right.
guy on the train. So is the guy on the bus. So is that person at your job. So is that person in the supermarket. So is that person in who we see every day. Then
Exactly.
we start to wrap up.
And then
You talk
when you deal with it here, right here, I did 6 months of personal training from last August to this past January with an organization called Momentum Education. That was all about personal development. It got really messy and ugly for me. And afterwards, when my training ended on January 13th, and some time passed, and I had time to process my experience for 6 months of dealing with all this stuff, I realized that the mess and the yuck of my experience was the education.
Okay,
That was
understand.
the education. It wasn't going to be all roses.
Where can people find you? Where can people find you as we start to wrap up? Thank
Instagram.
Bronxnet for this. Where can
Instagram.
they Instagram?
Right.
Okay. As we start to wrap up, Daniel, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Bronxnet for helping us having this experience. Mental health in you, y'all. We see you. We love you. We care for you. And come back. Take a seat. Thank you
That's
so much.
correct. We do love you. I love you.
Indeed. Thank you.
The proper
Likewise.
pronoun.